What's up guys, welcome to Munchkins Gaming, where we take your gaming to the next level. This is Munchkins logging in to bring you another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video, and welcome back to another video guide. In today's video, we are going to take a look at the Lufenia Plus fight for the Divine Ifrit fight. Now, before we do start, like and subscribe if you haven't already. It does help the channel and I really do appreciate it. And now without further ado, let's start this video. Alright, so we'll start this video off, as always, with how you're gonna deal with the Lufenia Orb, which is, funnily enough, you're not gonna be doing a lot in this fight. Let's talk about the Ifrit Lufenia Orb first. Now, this actually will appear when the Fireball's orb basically explodes, and it will disappear once the orb count reaches 35, believe it or not when it goes down to 0. This is going to be a non-lethal attack, and you get +1 when the ability you use resets the break status of Ifrit, and you get +2 when the player deals a windbreak damage from an extra attack that is considered a non-counter. You also get +3 when Ifrit actually takes a turn. Now, there are a few characters that can do this and make it a little bit quicker to get to 35, therefore removing the Lufenia Orb there and resummoning the Fireball. Now, I did list a few characters here that can actually increase the orb count, and honestly speaking, this can come naturally when Ifrit takes a turn. However, you do still want to make it so that it goes there quicker, because the boss actually has a aura whenever he has the orb on him. So it is still in your best interest to actually get there as quick as possible. However, the quickest way to get there is actually just letting Ifrit have a turn, which is kind of weird in a way, but still I think it's better to happen on your turn rather than Ifrit's turn. Alright, now let's talk about the Lufenia Orb on the Fireball, which will appear at the start of the battle and will disappear obviously when the orb count reaches 0. This will explode and deal you some damage, however it will not be lethal. Also, this will disappear when Ifrit's HP reaches less than 50%. This just auto triggers the explosion and transfers the Lufenia Orb to Ifrit. And then it will reappear all the time whenever Ifrit's count is cancelled. Basically when his orb count reaches 35 and so on. You do get +1 when the Fireball does get a turn, but there is no other way to increase the orb. So you are going to have to deal with this Fireball exploding quite a few times depending on how you deal with this fight. And speaking of the fight, let's talk about how this fight works. Let's talk about the Fireball first, because I think it is the most simplest one. The Fireball will basically always do an AoE Brave plus HP attack. So pretty simple, just mitigate the damage, heal through it if you want. However, if the player does take 10 turns, it will grant Ifrit an HP regen buff, which is equivalent to 1% of his HP whenever he gets a turn. Now, the Ifrit's orb attack when the Lufenia Orb basically reaches 35 will do an AoE Brave plus HP damage, and this will also inflict a couple of debuffs as well. Now, the orb attack is survivable, like I mentioned. It is non-lethal. I do like to say survivable because it can still be pretty lethal, the overall damage, depending on where you are. You can get like huge amounts of damage on this one. Now, when Ifrit's HP, you reach the HP threshold, less than 90, 70, 50, 30, and 10%. This will trigger Divine Hellfire Plus. Now, this is kind of just like the Lufenia Orb. However, he will delay you for 2 turns and will also inflict similar debuffs, and I believe it has like a defensive down debuff as well. So there is a lot of incoming damage, as you can already tell. Now, there is a caveat to the HP threshold, which is when it reaches less than 50%. this is a little bit different because it will trigger the Lufenia orb count from the fireball, therefore exploding and transferring the Lufenia orb to Ifrit. Now, the aura that I mentioned earlier when Ifrit has the Lufenia orb is called Scorch Aura. Now, whenever this is in play, which is basically whenever Ifrit has the Lufenia orb, all the players' characters have a max brave, initial brave, and max HP down. You can lower this effect by having or making sure that the boss actually has 4 or more debuffs. Now, I haven't personally tried this myself. This is one of the suggestions in I believe Excalibur's infographic, which again I always leave down in the link down in the description below to Dissidia info, which is always posted there, and also in the Tonberry troop as well, I believe. So I'll leave all those links down in the not in the comments, in the description below, and you guys can see for yourself. I again personally haven't tried this myself because when I did this in JP, I went with mostly offensive team with Warrior of Light. Alright guys, now let's talk about how you're gonna deal with this fight, and by design you can already tell that there are a lot of incoming damage, which means bring a tank or a healer to mitigate those damage. Warrior of Light, I can't say anything bad about him in this fight, well, maybe one thing, but he is going to provide you with that mitigation, making sure you're not taking any damage at all. And Bosch is another one of those characters that can actually do this. As far as anything goes, ignore the fireball as well. The fireball is just gonna keep rehealing itself. I probably forgot to mention this in how this fight works section, but the fireball will just keep rehealing itself. Just ignore the fireball altogether. If it explodes, it explodes, and you just have to deal with that. Now, our boy Setzer is still pretty valuable in this fight, although the freeze debuff, it only lasts for 3 turns, and sometimes Ifrit does have more than 3 turns, and that just means that you're not gonna be taking advantage a lot of the times with the freeze. Most cases he will just do a lot of turns, and then you have to reapply the freeze debuff again. And honestly, there's not a lot of freeze ability count as well, so while he's still very useful in this fight, and the rainbow damage is going to be nice with the incoming of the C90 era, especially if you're using like Noel or Sid. You will be capping more often than not when it comes to like brave damage or HP damage for that matter. So while I still think he is valuable, there are some options outside of him now. So take him at your own risk. Again, he is still valuable with that freeze debuff. Just it can be pretty clutch, especially if you don't have like a consistent way to mitigate damage, right? Now, another option here is to dispel the HP regen buff. Now, 1% doesn't sound a lot, but with the amount of HP damage that you really need, I don't think that will help if you keep this buff on. However, again, if you can just output that damage anyway, especially if you have very strong damage dealer like Machina or Jet, then you can probably ignore this, but it's still nice to get rid of it. Next is to take advantage of your BT plus effects. This is something that I've started saying, but it's not completely necessary to have your BT plus effects. However, I do highly recommend having them. The last thing that I have here, I put a little asterisk because I personally never experienced this, and that is if you meet or pass multiple HP threshold, there is a chance that you will be triggering multiple HP threshold events. So this is something again from Excalibur, which again is all in the description below. That is a warning, and I think what he meant by this is if you're going from the threshold in the 50% area, because it triggers the fireball orb, right? And then it also triggers divine hellfire at the same time. So I'm not 100% sure what he meant by this. It's not very clear in the infographic what he meant by meaning multiple thresholds will result in multiple triggers. I don't think Ifrit does multiple divine hellfire, but I could be wrong. Again, I never experienced this. That's why I had to put a little asterisk there. I'm not 100% sure regarding this. And that is all I can really say. I think it's more on the 50% mark, and then if you pass a threshold as well, especially if you're in maybe a summon phase or a BT phase, that's the only way you can actually get past multiple thresholds without triggering multiple things. So I'm not 100% sure about this. I do apologize, but it is something that is very warning there. So I thought I'd let you guys know. Now let's talk about the new section in this video. Well, it's a replacement basically. My list for characters that you may want to bring keeps getting longer and longer, so I thought I'd highlight a few characters that I would consider the MVPs. Now the 4 characters I picked, with no surprise, Warrior of Light makes the list, and Bosch also makes the list. These are the 2 tanks that I would highly recommend bringing. Now, I did say I have one bad thing to say about Warrior of Light, and this also kind of applies to Bosch, which is they don't actually do a ton of HP damage. Unfortunately, they are lacking in that area. However, you can make it up by bringing one of the 2 characters here, which is Machina, which deals a ton of damage. You can also bring Noel if you really want to. I put Jet here because I love Jet. I think it was one of my favorite characters in Final Fantasy X. So I put him over Noel, but there are a bunch of characters like I mentioned. If you guys don't like this MVP character section, let me know down in the comments below. If you want the freaking lists again, let me know down there, and I will put the list back, okay? No worries right there. Now, as for Cole characters, unfortunately, this is still going to be a list. You can go with the usual if you want. Faris is a good one to bring. Like I mentioned, if you can apply more than 4 debuffs, I do believe that the Scorch aura is not going to be as strong. However, I'm not 100% sure on that. Again, as I mentioned before, Amidst Line can apply multiple debuffs once again, but I feel like going with the usual, especially increasing your overall HP damage, is going to be very helpful. Alright guys, now let's talk about party compositions. The first one is actually the team that I went with in JP, which is Machina, Warrior of Light, and Cloud of Darkness. Cloud of Darkness was basically here for the BT plus effect. The extra damage is always really nice. She can also delay, while Ifrit can also have an immunity to delays and stuff like that. I think, the extra damage she brings was actually pretty helpful. Now, for some reason, I have Onion Knight as my support. I actually don't remember how I used him here. I'm guessing it's more for the turn manipulation or anything like that. And I do have Shiva for my summon. And for the Cole team, I can't fully recall who I really brought, but I'm guessing it's somewhere around this category. Kurasami, Jack, Bronth, and even Faris was one of my favorite calls to use back in the early C90 era. The next team I have for you guys is going to be a tank-orientated team, which means don't worry about dying. You've got Snow, Core, and Oron. Lots of off-turn damage here, but essentially you're immortal. That's the thing. For the support, I went with Machina, kind of like, because if you really want to do a little bit more damage, then why not? And of course for the summon, I went with Shiva. And for the cold team, kind of like really a lot of debuffs here to increase your overall damage. Now the last team I have for you guys is going to be Snow, Machina, and Sid. And for the cold team, I went with Warrior of Light, Kurosame, and Fran. And support, I just went with Machina again because why not? He is the best damage dealer right now, at least in my opinion. Noel, of course, is also really good since he has his C90 stuff. But yeah, I was really skeptical with the Noel thing when he first came out as the first C90 era character alongside with Sid. I kind of like Sid more actually, but that's just my own personal, you know, opinion on that matter. But yeah, I kind of went with just like I think what I did here was I kind of had to feel out what C90 was going to be like. So I didn't really pull on the first character. I just went, if I can do this with level 80 characters, then I am going to do this with level 80 characters. So no bad mouthing on Noel here. It was just my own decision. Alright guys, we are finally at the end of this video, and man, this is one of the longest guides that I've ever done. I think just with the multiple, you know, Lufenia orbs and how this fight really works, it just ended up like this. But here are my final thoughts regarding this fight. This was a pretty close fight for me back in JP. So I would say it's more on the moderate to the difficulty side, since this is something that we are starting off in the C90 era. However, there are a ton of characters that can sort of deal with this. I still hate Shiva more than Ifrit, and I'll be honest, I really don't like the Shiva fight. The Ifrit fight, while there's a lot of HP damage, it was pretty easy to mitigate them, you know. The same thing can be said with Shiva, but the freeze debuff, oh my god, that is torture. So with Ifrit, I mean, let him have turns. Let him have turns. As long as you have shields, let him have turns and that Scorch will just go away, right? So, yeah, I would definitely put this in at least in the moderate side of things when it comes to difficulty. Some people may find this hard, but for me personally, I think it was more moderate for me. But I can really imagine it getting out of hand, especially with the HP regen, the amount of HP damage you're gonna take, and if you don't manage your shields very well as well. Those are the things that you will be looking into in this fight. Anyway guys, that is basically it for this video. Please do remember to click like and subscribe if you haven't already. It does help the channel and I really do appreciate it if you can share this video as well with other Dffoo players who are struggling to beat their Lufenia Plus fights. And hopefully this video can help them, and share this video as well to other players. And of course you can check out my other Lufenia fights or the Lufenia Plus fights videos or guides. I don't know what I'm talking about, but hey, check them out if you are struggling with a specific fight. I know I haven't done the Ursula event fight, and I don't think I will at this point. It's kind of pretty late to actually do it, so I do apologize. I didn't get the time to go around that. Just, yeah, work is just crazy. But in any case, please follow me on Twitter and on Facebook at Munchkins Gaming. Again, leave down in the comments below, guys, if you think I missed something, or if you have more information on something, please leave them all down in the comments below. This is to help the community out more than to point out my mistakes. So I really do encourage you, if you think I have made some sort of mistake or anything like that, to please leave down in the comments below. I am only human, so I would appreciate it for all your help as well. Now, this is it, guys. This is Munchkins logging off. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next level.